What's up, people? This is your boy Budini Mussolini doing a podcast on a drug addict's lifestyle, people suffering from drug addiction. This is a serious matter, and hopefully, this is a great interview for people that are viewing. Now, we have here, what's your name and where you from?
I'm Diane Garnett, and I am from Central Islip, New York.
Okay. So, this is based on drug addiction, so we know that you have a family member or somebody in the family or some type of experience with drug addiction. Started off with explaining like the situation we have at hand.
Okay, well, the situation that I am presently dealing with is a daughter who is handicapped due to a drug overdose. She was actually dead on the scene, and the paramedics were able to revive her. And she is a living, breathing, walking, talking miracle because she should have been brain dead. She was in a coma for several weeks, and they did not think that she would wake up. The prognosis was not good.
Okay. Do you know what drug this was that caused all of these problems or
I think it was a drug interaction with crack cocaine, marijuana, and alcohol.
mixed? Okay.
Hmm.
Um, as far as the upbringing in the household and stuff like that, how did this affect like most of the family members in your family? I'm pretty sure it affected everybody, but
It
like,
affected everybody that was there. Well, especially she has two children, and the youngest was 8 months, no, 10 months old at the time. And so I had to take over full responsibility. Her older child was 5 at the time, and thank goodness her father stepped up to the plate so that he could help. And we've been doing that together, the two of us, but I've been solely responsible for the baby who is now 3 years old. Um, it has changed everybody's lifestyle. She's not able to interact with her children in a manner that a mother would be able to interact because she can't really even take care of herself yet. So let alone take care of her children.
did you know she was using?
I did. Um, Her brother had just come up from Georgia, and we were trying to do an intervention just maybe 2 days before this happened, and she shut us down. She would not hear any of what we were trying to say to her.
When did you first find out that this could have been something going on in your family, like drugs and stuff like that with her?
Well, probably about, I would say, a year prior is when I realized she had gone to rehab, and this was a relapse. She, so I kind of, I realized, but initially this was her second rehab. The first time that she went to rehab, I really thought it was for uh, emotional healing from being suffering some sort of abusive situations. So I did not know that there were drugs involved until after she came from that rehab. And then when she went in the second time, then everything was kind of out in the open, and she was supposed to have stayed there until she gave birth, because when she went to that other rehab, she was pregnant. But she left after 3 months.
Okay. How old was she when you discovered that she was using?
I think she was probably about 23 when I
23.
found out, when I figured it out.
Okay. So you think she was doing it before you
Yes, I
found out?
think she was, I know she was dabbling, smoking marijuana and things like that at 14, 15. That's what I later found out. A lot of people knew, nobody said anything to me. I knew things were going on with her behavior, but I didn't recognize what I was seeing.
Do you think you know who introduced her to drugs?
Yes, it was a trusted family member who gave her the drugs, but he was also doing other things.
Okay. And as far as you know, it probably started when she was in her teens.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Like between, I would say 14, 15. That's, yeah.
Okay. All right. As far as the change in her since the experience, I know it's pretty hard, but recovery is not something that y'all got to deal with right now because of her condition, right?
Well, that's not the case because we are very fortunate that her brain is still working. That's the good news. The bad news is that it is still functioning in those same old ways. So we're still seeing some of the behaviors of addiction. So I would like very much to get her into a program. Like right now, she doesn't really have access to any drugs or alcohol because she has 24-hour aid, and so somebody's generally watching, but it's still there because I know I left some alcohol out one time, and she got into that, and
That was
I,
after the experience?
after this, yes, when she finally came home, after, because she was in a nursing home for uh, over a year, and when she finally came home, I had left some alcohol in the kitchen, and she got into that, and I noticed that she was acting strange, and I said to her, did you drink something, and she was denying it, but I looked in the garbage can, and saw that, and then she went to the bathroom, fell in the bathroom, broke her teeth.
Damn.
Yeah, yeah, and I was like, you know so I know, so now I have to keep everything locked up because given the opportunity, I mean, I do see some changes in her behavior that are positive because of the interaction being improved between the two of us, but I really feel that it is very important for her to complete those 12 steps, especially since I expect her to make a full recovery and she's going to be out there available to get whatever she wants once she regains her independence. So it's still important because the behaviors are still there. They don't just go away.
Right. Okay, look, being a family member or a parent that experienced their child going through something like this, what are some of the things that you can advise other family members to look out for that leads up to what you experience as far as drug addiction?
I would say, first of all, you have to be very mindful of who is around your children. Don't ignore anything. If you think you see something, act on it immediately. Call somebody, talk to someone who can get you some type of help, because there is help available, but you have to sometimes really go out there and look for it. You have to do a search. You have to you have to read the reviews. You have to do all of these things. But I would say definitely don't ignore changes in behavior that, that you're not accustomed to seeing.
Okay. When you first experienced that she may have been on drugs or something was going on, what was one of the steps that you took to try to prevent that?
Well, there was nothing I could do to prevent it because it was already too late when I realized it. And that's why we were trying to arrange the intervention, and I was going to try to get her to go to rehab, especially, you know, under the the circumstances, with the young children and everything. So that was really our plan, was to try to get her in that rehab that day. We had already made arrangements. I have another family member who is a nursing supervisor, and he has certain connections, and he came, but unfortunately, with their behavior, they do deflect. She used his presence as an excuse not to talk, because she was like, oh, why did you invite him? I'm like, he's family. It's not like you don't know him. But because unfortunately, when somebody is an adult, by the time I realized everything that was going on, she was an adult. And I couldn't force her to do anything. So there's really, once you have an adult child, now if I had caught this earlier, I could have gotten a PINS petition, which that is an acronym for a person in need of supervision.
Okay. You say your daughter, you went through an experience where when she overdosed, she died.
She died.
Walk me through that experience. How did you?
Well, I credit her baby, because the baby was 10 months old, and she had asthma, and I couldn't give the baby the nebulizer treatment because I had been trying to wake my daughter up, and she was snoring. I still didn't recognize, even though I couldn't wake her up, I didn't recognize that she was leaving this earth, because she was snoring. And I kept trying to shake her. I was trying to wake her up, and so she could help me with the baby, to give the nebulizer treatment. And I went in a couple of times, and then I was on the phone with somebody. They told me, you better get in there. So I was on the phone with one of my friends. She said, if it was my child, I would be calling 911. I said, yeah, but she's snoring. And she said, I don't care. So I said, all right, let me get off the phone. Let me go back in here. At that point, there was no more snoring. There was no noise of any kind. And when I turned her over, her lips were blue. So I had to immediately then call 911. So at that point, she was already deceased. And within minutes, the police arrived, and because the 911 operator was walking me through the steps of doing CPR, because I don't know CPR, so that's another thing. And the police, I let them take over, and this is why I say I know she's a miracle, because after 7 minutes, you should be brain dead. And I don't know how long she had been down when I found her, but it took them between 20 and 30 minutes to get a heartbeat. And she was, so when we got to the emergency room, they got her to the hospital, she went immediately to the ICU, and she was in a coma for 3 weeks.
3 weeks. That was my next question. How long was she down in a coma for 3? So she was basically asleep for 3 weeks, and then one day she just popped out of a coma, or you got a call?
No, I happened to have been there because I was up there every day. And I happened to have been there, but I said, actually, when I came in, it's a little bit interesting because they had moved her out of the ICU, but she was moving a lot, and I was concerned because they had to give her a tracheotomy because they couldn't intubate her any longer than 2 weeks. Then they have to switch it over. They had to give her the trach, and I was concerned that she was going to pull it out because she was moving a lot. So when I went up there to the hospital that particular day, they had allowed her to soil herself, and they had not changed her. I came in, and she was soiled, and I was going ballistic on the staff there. And I said to her, I said, if you want to go home, I said, if you want to go home, blink your eyes. And she blinked, but that that could be involuntary because I was used to her doing those blinks. And then she did something that she had never done before. She smiled, and then I knew.
Okay. That's a hard experience. That's crazy. But all right. Have you ever found or seen any drugs on her in a room or a person? You never seen anything that she was involved with?
No, because she had just moved back in with me, which I also say another miracle because we weren't living together prior to her coming out of that second rehab. And then when she came back, she really had no place to go. And so we made an agreement that, I would allow her to come back to my home because if you ever deal with anybody who is on drugs, a lot of times the behavior is just so bad that you have to be able to set very clear boundaries, and she did not respect any boundaries that we had agreed upon or that had been created. So she didn't, I don't know where she would go out. And I don't know where, because I didn't find anything because even after this happened, the police had me looking through her things, looking for this.
And still nothing.
And I didn't find anything in the house.
How old is your daughter at this moment?
26.
26. Okay. And how long ago was this experience?
This was 2.5 years ago.
Okay. So she hasn't done drugs in 2.5 years.
Right.
What are the chances of her getting a full recovery?
She has a very good chance of having a full recovery physically.
Right. Now, once she fully recovers, and which we all hope that happens, do you think the chances are of her relapsing and going back on drugs? Do you think it's possible, or you think that's...
I think it's 100% if she doesn't do those 12 steps. So right now, while she does not have her independence completely, I am planning to have her join a group, either AA or NA, whatever we can, get to.
So you think a drug addiction is so strong that even a person that went through a near-death experience will go back and try drugs again after that?
Absolutely. She drank alcohol again after that, and that's not her drug of choice. That she didn't have access to her drug of choice.
Okay. Have you ever done drugs?
What kind of drugs? No.
Hard drugs.
No.
You're not going to go with the weed. Okay. You never done drugs?
No,
okay.
I haven't.
So, you seeing somebody do drugs and go through this serious addiction to the point of where they would go through a near-death experience and still have a shot and going back to doing that. Addiction is so serious that I want you to tell me, what do you think that we can do to prevent our families from experiencing stuff like this at an early age when it comes to our kids? Is there anything, because once a person get involved in this, or once a person starts to experience this, it's a very difficult thing to get out of. A lot of people, family members, they go right off into the darkness with this stuff, and some people never get saved. So I've been watching for a minute your daughter, and you've been really you counseling her, you've been giving her all of the help that she need. I see you got people coming and watching her, and that's a lot of stuff going on, and all of this stems from drugs. Your daughter's 26 years old. She's not even, I've seen some drug addicts that's been doing this for 26 years.
That's right.
And they ain't even go through that experience.
Exactly. And well, one of the things is, there's always the debate. Is it nature or is it nurture? And I think it could be both, because I think that some people have a predisposition to this type of thing. And unfortunately, you don't know until you do it. You know, some people, like I have a another family member whose mother was an alcoholic, and she said she really feared touching. She's like, I don't know how it might affect me, because if you have that predisposition, or you know what they call that addictive personality, you don't know until you do something, and then it's pretty much almost too late, and especially the younger that you are. So I would say the best thing we can do is educate. And we have to find ways that we can educate in which we know our audience, and we're going to say it in a way that our audience can receive it. Because you don't want to be beating someone over the head with a hammer, but you do want to let them know the dangers of it, you know, and that's the whole thing. When you talk about alcohol and marijuana, which is now legal, but our whole lifetimes, alcohol has been legal, and alcohol is extremely dangerous. And it is a very big gateway drug. And there are so many people that start off drinking, and then that opens them up to try other things. And then when they try other things, they many times find their drug of choice. So
How many children do you have in total?
I have two.
And were both of them victims of any drug abuse or just one?
Just one.
Okay. As far as like the direction of where we push our children when it comes to being like being a victim of this stuff and like staying away from it. I had a girl tell me on the show that the thing that got her interest in drugs was a drug program. She seen a commercial about this drug program everywhere, and it made her interested in drugs. Yeah, that was the one of the.
Yeah,
So
that's a strange story.
there's a lot of doors you can go through, friends you can have, people, places, and things have a lot to do with, you know, people that are on drugs and stuff like that. Now, your daughter is the only person in your family that had a drug addiction problem?
Absolutely,
Just her?
absolutely not. Her stepfather, my husband, he had a very serious drug problem, and that is how he died.
So, do you think that has something to do with why she?
I do. I do. I think that, you know, I
Did
think
she know that was the story of
his death.
Yeah.
Let's see. Well, she was a teenager at the time, so I don't think we really talked about it that much when he passed. So I don't know that, I don't think that she knew the details of his death, because I didn't really discuss it with her.
But it was drug addiction?
Oh, yes. Yes,
Can
it
you
was.
elaborate on that? Like, what was his story?
Well, his story was being an alcoholic. And that also, and once again, I can say it stemmed from his being abused as a child. And this is why I say the importance of keeping your eyes on your children as much as you can, because he was abused. He turned to alcohol. You know, no one wants to become an alcoholic. I think, and who knows, we can't say if you're predisposed to that, or if it happens as a result of, you know, your environment, your circumstances. But so but that was also not his drug of choice. His drug of choice was crack cocaine. And so for him, drinking was going to lead him to that path of doing crack cocaine. And things became unmanageable for him. And he was another person. You said something very significant about people, places, and things. And I think a lot of people who face addiction don't believe the power of that. My daughter even said to me one time, in between the first and the second rehab that she went to, she said to me, I didn't think that I really had to stay away from those people. And she said, but I realize now, before entering the second rehab, that I do need to do that. And that was a discussion that I had with my husband. And he also thought that he could put himself in a situation where he was surrounded by those things and not fall prey to it, or and still try new things, because as far as I knew, he was not involved with heroin until the end. And that was something I saw. Again, I could see it was different, but I didn't know what it was.
Right. So, my experience, it seems like a lot of this stuff stems from generational curses. A lot of parents pass it down to the children. Do you think that this is something that will affect your grandkids?
It will affect them in the way that it's affecting them now, but God willing, my daughter makes a full recovery and deals with her issues, and it won't affect them in that manner. Do I think they will be victims of this? I say no, because I've learned a lot in this journey, and I will do my best to make sure that they are in certain areas around certain people, and I will be vigilant that if I see any changes in behavior, guess what? We're going to go take a drug test. And I said, and everybody's going, no.
Okay. This show is basically based on getting help and stuff like that. And I've been watching you, and you do a lot of research on how to get help. Can you provide some of that information on this show for people that are going through the same thing, that don't know the direction on how to get help or
Absolutely.
where to look?
Well, I tell you, a lot of what I found was on the internet, researching people who had different types of problems, which a lot of them credited those problems with their abuse and use of drugs. So I researched several different types of problems and found the best resources to help people cope with those types of difficulties. Excuse me. And I also did a lot of talking to people. I said, when this happened to my daughter, I did not stay silent. I talked to people and I told people, this is what's going on. And that was actually my biggest help, because this person said, you know what? I know this person. Call that person. I know this person. Call that person. And there's a lot of resources. Unfortunately, the main resources that I found were not prior to her experience of overdosing and dying. But they were afterwards. So a lot of the resources are for someone in her position who the problems that she has, she lost part of her hearing. She lost her ability to speak normally. She lost the ability to walk. She was on dialysis. She had a feeding tube. She had all these things, and so a lot of the resources that I have found were to help her post overdose because of the all the conditions that she endured because of that time that she was technically and dead. So as far as there are so many rehabs available that are free all over Long Island, and they accept every insurance, including Medicaid. So that's something to know. And don't let them try to tell you that they don't accept Medicaid. A lot of them do, and but you still want to do your research about what goes on.
Okay. Um, what's been the most difficult part of dealing with the addiction situation as far as getting help?
Finding the appropriate help. And I definitely went through that with my husband as well, um, because we know they are an addicted person. They are Academy Award winning actors, and a lot of times they stand in their own way. So they want to go find places that they feel that they can manipulate. So you really have to know what's happening in this facility.
Okay. Now I'm gonna say this. This is gonna be an interesting part of this podcast. Your daughter, the at the time that that situation happened, I was like one of the last people she spoke to. You know this, right? So I pulled in front of your house. She came to my car. She asked me for something. It was a drug. I'm pretty sure it was coke, but it threw me off a little bit. So I kind of asked her, like, you all right? And she was like, yeah. She was waiting for somebody. I said, you can get in the house? And she was like, yeah, I'm good or whatever. She said she was waiting for somebody to come home. And I just remember pulling off that night. And I stayed out the whole night. The next day I came home. I came home to a whole street full of ambulance, police. It was like a crime scene. So that's when I discovered that this situation was going on. And this is how viewers I know Mrs. Diane. Okay? So, with that being said, I know her daughter from prior to this situation, and I know her after. I've seen both situations. And as far as when I saw her before this, beautiful girl, normal, everything. She did nothing checked out crazy or different. She just was a pretty girl that was coming up and just chilling. That's what I saw. Next thing you know, this thing happens, and now we're dealing with somebody that needs medical problem, maybe medical help. That's dealing with brain damage and all type of other stuff. It messed me up too. I felt like it was something that people needed to hear because it's serious, and I know her personally. And every day she goes through this experience, I kind of go through it with her because I see it, not as a person that's actually dealing with it, but I watch, and I'm a good visionary, and I see things. So I'm sorry to see that situation go the way it went, but all of us got our experiences for whatever reason. As far as your household, looks like it was pretty normal to me. Looked like a good household. Didn't look like anything I wouldn't raise my kids in. It looked nice. I would want my kids to have what you have. This just shows people that drugs don't pick a household. They don't. It's not just in the hood. It ain't just next door to your house. It's everywhere. And my job is to bring people from different angles of life to tell their story to let you know how it goes into homes and affect different types of people. Right? This lady is, she has been working her whole life. As far as I'm concerned, she's successful. But she suffers from the same thing a lot of us suffer from, and it's drugs. So we're trying to find ways to get help. What's some of the programs, names that you got that did help you?
She was, oh boy, see, now that's a tough question because I don't even remember that. I don't
sorry
even
for
remember the
choosing.
names of these places. But my daughter, she went to, see, she always wanted to go. She went to a program in Florida, and she went to another program in California. Um, Now, there are some local places where my husband went. There's one in Amityville. You gotta, let me tell you, let me see if I can look and see what the name of that place is in Amityville. He went to one in Amityville, um, and that was good. But once again, I'm going to say he did not complete those 12 steps.
Oh,
And that was because I think that's the painful part for them, is talking about and making amends and talking about the pain in their life. Because if they could really access that and talk about the pain, they probably wouldn't use drugs. So that was, that was one of the things. But let me just see if I'm going to find this name of this place that he went to in Amityville because it's escaping me. Okay, let me see.
question.
Yes,
You said you have another sibling, right? Another son? think
I have a
you
son,
said.
yes.
You have a son. How did that situation with his sister affect him?
He was devastated, I mean, that's why he came home that weekend before this happened. He came home to try to help create an intervention, and I advised him against that because I said, I don't know if I'm going to be able to get her to listen to me, let alone listen to you, because you know how sometimes people are with their siblings.
I assume he's older.
He is older.
Yeah, probably, yeah.
And he was like, no, I'm coming. There was nothing I could do to stop him from coming to try to see if he could help his sister because things had gotten pretty bad. And he was like, he felt like he could help. So, of course, he said that right now he's taking a lot of heat from his friends because he didn't move back to New York.
So you would say some of the most important help for a person that suffered from drug addiction is programs.
That is what I would say.
12
And
step programs.
12-step programs, see a therapist, but it's got to be somebody who is going to really help you, somebody who has a specialty in addiction counseling. And you have to be willing to go there and tell the truth. And I said, I had experience with my husband. He was seeing a therapist, and I kind of knew something was not going right because he went back more than once. Because other therapists that he had gone to, he would go once, and it was like it was too much for him. He wasn't willing to talk about it.
All right. So
Let me see.
do you have any names of some of these programs that helped you, or you got
Seafield.
Seafield?
That's one of the ones, but I'm trying to
Okay.
find the name of the
Talk to
one.
Seafield.
South Oaks is the one that he went to at South Oaks.
I know South Oaks.
That's the one he went to.
In Amityville.
Yes, in Amityville. And
That was a good one. You said.
that was a good one. That was a good one.
Okay.
And they were very strict about who they let in, what activities they could participate in when they were there. They had Family Day because it's important, but I think it's also important for you to realize what's going on. There's a lot of things that you don't understand about the behaviors. And so as a family member, you need to educate yourself on what are the signs, and when you see certain behaviors, you need to understand where the behavior is coming from. So this way, you can attack the problem appropriately. But if you don't know what you're looking at or why, then these are the reasons why you can't get to the bottom of it faster. But really the reality of it is that the person has to want it more than you want it for them. They have to want it for themselves. So a lot I recommend for family members, if you're not successful getting your loved one into a program, or they're not, or they're just in the program just to be appeasing you, you need to get yourself into like Al-Anon or something like that to show you how to deal with the person who has the addiction, because it is a family disease.
What was that, Al-Anon?
Al-Anon. Al-Anon mostly deals with family members of alcoholics, but it really doesn't matter. It could be any type of drug. And they teach you as a family member how to not become an enabler. Because a lot of times we as family members, we want to help, but we're really enabling because we don't know what to do.
So this program that you're talking about, Al-Anon, is for people who have people that are involved in their family or around them, friends and stuff like that, are on drugs, and it's ways for you to help them without pushing them further.
Exactly.
Into
doing it. Yes.
That's pretty good. I never heard of that program. That's pretty good. I gotta look that up. Al-Anon.
Al-Anon.
Okay. So and for those of you who don't know, South Oaks is located on Broadway in Amityville. I'm familiar with that. I grew up in Amityville. It's on Long Island. And the other one was Seafield.
Seafield.
You would have to look that one up. Seafield is a big organization. I heard about it before. And I'm going to try to call some of these people to see if I can figure out ways to help people, too, that are addicted to drugs and that are on it. And I'm not going to lie. This was a serious interview. This was very interesting. I appreciate you coming down. You're beautiful. I appreciate that.
Thank
that
you.
was a good little situation you shared with our audience. And it was very personal, and I appreciate you putting out this information for people to see. And with that being said, don't let it go over your head. This is Boudini Mussolini with another podcast on drug addiction. And say that.